So Ajahn Brahm's making the case that jhanic states are necessary for liberation, for cessation, right? He's very strong. He seems very strong on that position. Do you agree with that position? And if you do, how realistic is it for someone, who's working, Monday to Friday, got things to do on the weekend? How realistic is it for a lay practitioner to achieve jhanic states?
Well, I take those as two very different questions. For full and complete enlightenment, I can't say. According to the suttas, I think a strong argument can be made that absorption jhana is necessary for full, complete arhat awakening. But I can't say. There's some arguments that say it's not necessary. But for and for some degree of awakening, perhaps just to a level of the insight into not self, maybe it's not necessary. The necessity of it is not so much a concern to me, because for me, this is a process of purifying the mind. And this is a system that allows us to experience the purified mind and to really get to know it. So when we undertake a practice to abandon greed, hate, and delusion in all forms, and there's a possibility of meditating in a way in which no greed, hate, or delusion is arising in any form, I mean, sign me up.
Yeah.
I want to learn it, right?
Definitely.
And I want to experience it, and I want to allow the familiarity of those states through the samadhi to then inform the insight. Because I know my mind, it still wants to cling even though I know better. I mean, I've known things change for a long time, and I still hold on to them. I know they can't provide me lasting satisfaction, and I know that there's no enduring self, and yet the mind is conditioned to still go with those. So until my mind is really fully willing to let go completely forever, then I want to do whatever I can in my meditation practice to nurture those states. And I see jhana practice as being a training ground for this, to really familiarize ourselves with that experience of that clarity and purity of mind. Is it necessary? I really can't say. Is it helpful? Yes. Can we do it? Can we do it? Okay, I shouldn't have said that word. Can we let go into it? Can we realize it? Can we experience it? Can this be part of the way that we perceive the mind? Yes. As a layperson in busy life, it's possible. But it's not easy because it requires conditions. And so the conditions require abandoning all the hindrances. So you have to consider that aspect of abandoning the hindrances. And I also think that hindrance of restlessness and of the conceiving of self is a really sticky one, especially for busy people. And that could be busy monastics as well as busy lay people. But I think busy lay people have a lot of things that we're juggling in a lot of different realms. And so the busyness of constructing, I have to do, I'm busy doing this, how did that work out, blah, blah, blah. All the things with our responsibilities that often reinforce who we are and what we need to do. They keep us busy, and they keep the mind restless, and they keep the mind active. So I do think we need retreats. We need a condition in which we can physically step away from it. I know many people who can maintain access to jhana as lay people in daily life. But I don't know anybody who was able to do it the first few times outside of retreat. It's as though we have to learn it under pristine conditions. And then our mind understands how it's such a good thing. It's so much better to let go than to hold on. It really is. And then we can do it and experience it in our daily lives. But it does require the conditions, and not everybody has done the work to create those conditions in their daily lives.
I think that's a really important point. 2 points you're making. First is that this is a path of purification of the mind. And as inconvenient as it might seem, this requires retreat practice to get full advantage of that and to progress.
I hate to say that it
Yeah.
requires retreat practice because I never see anywhere in the suttas that the Buddha
Yeah.
went on a 10-day retreat. Well, okay, he went off to the forest for 2 weeks and he did certain things, but like, they didn't, it's not exactly what we do where we go to a retreat center
Yes.
perhaps. So I hate to say that it's required. I just don't know anybody. Those conditions, I mean, retreats are designed for samadhi.
Yeah. Well, what I was going to say is that it's become fashionable to say that, meditation isn't really about achieving these transcendent states, that and then hoping that some of the majesty of the transcendent state trickles down into daily life. But actually, meditation is about just being with our very human thoughts and feelings and emotions and not trying to escape them. So when you hear things like that, what do you think? Maybe Ajahn Brahm.
I mean, the whole language has confused the issue. You cannot escape them. You disappear, and then escape happens. Mm-hmm. So it's the whole idea of understanding this non-self. And even to let go, you can't let go. You try it. I once thought I was smart and developed a simile of the hand. Because I often notice myself, I'm not doing anything, I pick things up, I hold on to this, I hold on to the microphone, and I thought the only way that I can cut off to let go of things permanently, once and for all, is to cut off my hand. When I don't have a thing which does the grasping, then I will let go forever. And I told the monks at the time, that's a simile of the hand. And I thought how smart I was that I invented that until I found this in the Samyutta Nikaya. So the Buddha got there before me. The hand is your mind. That's what it does. Even this was the saying which I saw years ago on the wall of the philosophy department in Cambridge University. And sometimes I get the names wrong, or I mix up the first two. And it was to do is to be, which was René Descartes, the French philosopher. Underneath that, turn it around, instead of to do is to be is to do, Jean-Paul Sartre, the existential philosopher. And underneath that was a modern American philosopher, do, be, Frank Sinatra. Now, I have to tell some sort of funny story, no matter how serious this conversation is, but that is an important point. Where there is a doer, there is a beer. Where there's being, there's doing, which is one of the reasons to get stillness, to actually to let go and stop the doer, you have to abandon the being, the bhavadanha, the craving to exist, the attachment to being. And it is just muddying the waters to call this becoming. It's not becoming, it's actually being, bhava, present tense. Not bhava, which is another sort of form of that word, a derivative, which is actually make, become. This is being. So the idea of letting go of the craving to be, which is the strongest of all of the attachments and cravings which the human being can feel. To do that, we have to totally let go. And that's why it's scary. Because you're not there anymore. You're gone, baby. You're gone. Sorry, that's my nature.
Sometimes people do experience fear when they first enter these absorption states because they're so unfamiliar. They're so different. It's not unusual to find a student a little bit shocked at, whoa, and they come right out, or they're agitated a little bit by their first experience of it. But when we look at the state, we find that there's nothing to fear in them. They're beautiful states that are joyous and wholesome. We find not a trace of defilement in them. And when we take a moment to actually reflect on what that state was, that may have been quite unfamiliar because we're not processing information now through the sense stores in terms of what is to my advantage, which is a kind of an ordinary way of perceiving things. But we're absorbed with our meditation subject in with sublime joy. It really can be shocking, and not everybody experiences fear, but some people do, and I think it's worth mentioning that.
Even the Buddha experienced it. Before he became enlightened, he said, "Why should I be afraid of that bliss in jhanas, which has nothing to do with the world?" And he was remembering his first experience under the rose apple tree as a young kid. And then he said, "I will not be afraid. Maybe this is a path to Bodhi, enlightenment, awakening." And he realized, yes, this is the path. And that's why he developed those jhanas under the Bodhi tree.
Yeah, and it's a beautiful example of how we can let go and also see clearly what is the experience, and let go and see clearly what it is. So it's not just like being pulled into some altered experience blindly. We're actually seeing what that is, and there's a reflection on the wholesome state. And there's a sense of it leading to the profound experiences of release.
Yes. That idea that you feel, you know, when you first experience these jhanas, this is powerful, this is scary as hell, but it's going to take me to somewhere really amazing, wonderful. And then if you look at sort of how the Buddha described them, it reinforces the Buddha experienced the fear as well. It makes you feel in good company. And also that as it sort of draws you in, you let go, allow it to happen. Especially you have the confidence. It's one of the reasons why I'm very glad that we're here, you're teaching this and I'm teaching this. There's nothing to fear. There's beautiful wisdom and insight. You will not get stuck in the jhanas. What will happen is you get enormous wisdom. And it transcends gender. It transcends any sort of age. It transcends any tradition. Oh, yeah. But that is one danger, which I often say, that people who do a lot of jhanas, I'm sorry, Shayla, but there is a danger. You may lose your hair.
Is that a sign?
Yeah.
So if people are encountering this fear, what do you instruct them?
To go for it. Look, we have so many fears in our modern society. And sometimes people go, what would you see the other day? Somebody doing a jump off the cliffs. And they want to do this. They want to go riding in fast cars. There's many things they're afraid of. Why be afraid of something which you feel is blissful, pure? And why? You hear, this is one of the reasons I speak here, to try and say, look, please do not be afraid. Hopefully that you've known me and Shayla for long enough to know that I don't get anything out of this. I'm not trying to exploit you. I'm not trying to get more disciples. I want more than enough. Do you want some? All this is because I was afraid. I'm not making a claim now. Okay, but anyway, I know a monk I'm very close to who was really scared, was blissed out, and wondered what the heck are these states. And because no one had ever told me about them, they'd never been explained to me. They were there, but I never understood them, which is one of the reasons why, that I have to share them with you. I have to sort of feel an obligation so that if those things start to happen and you get these beautiful lights in the mind, energies, so if the hindrances start disappearing, you can't feel any of your body, you can't hear anything, go for it. The pleasure is sometimes something which draws you in because it's amazing, perfectly pure and wholesome. You can feel that. As you said, you can taste this is leading to something which is incredible and totally wholesome. There's nothing in there which even has a smell of attachments. Purely wholesome, no hindrances, clear seeing, and you get into those places and you will never, ever regret it. So that's why don't be afraid.
So we're not going to be afraid. Shala, I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about nimitta.
the term nimitta is often used in the practices of jhana, and it basically means sign, mark. And it can be an ordinary term. It doesn't necessarily mean the only reference to nimitta is not just to the samadhi nimitta. You can find it for any sign. That's the way perception operates, is we know through signs. We know through mental signs of things what something is. But there is a transformation not only of the qualities of happiness that occur in the deepening of samadhi, but there's a transformation of the way that we know our meditation subject. For example, if you're using a perception like the breath, such as the breath, that's a common and very versatile object for meditation. You can perceive the breath in many different ways. You can perceive changing sensations of the breath, but it's also possible to maintain a continuity of mindfulness on breath in such a way that the physicality of the sensations disappears from perception, and now the breath becomes known as a mental sign of the breath. That is perceived slightly differently for different people, but it's very frequently perceived as a luminosity in the mind, a mental knowing of breath. And so this now is a mental sign, and mind can very easily absorb with this mental experience. So it's not now having to go out and process a tingle, a cold, a pressure, a rising, a falling, a this and a that, all the changing experiences of breath. But it has a steady and very subtle, very beautiful, subtle perception where the mind can rest and absorb through that perception that was derived from the breath. But you can also there's other kinds of nimittas that develop with other meditation practices. But I think maybe the breath is the most common of the practices, at least that are taught in the contemporary circles that I wander through.
Ajahn Brahm, could you talk a little bit about the relationship between the breath and nimitta?
Yes, I totally agree with you there. But what happens is that you can read this in the Anapanasati Sutta, that when you get deeper into the breathing, you experience this not as a kaya sankhara, but as a chitta sankhara. It is the mental image of the breath. But that also comes with a lot of piti sukha, joy and happiness, delight. And that joy and happiness shows us how strong this mind is. And that joy and happiness gets very intense sometimes. Again, don't be afraid of that. And the nimittas, as far as the development of jhanas are concerned, please excuse me, he's a great monk, he's Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi, but sometimes I do scold him for some of his translations. And there is a whole sutta on how to develop the nimittas. It's called the Upakalesa Sutta. But unless you know Pali, then you miss it, because Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi always translates as that thing. And when I scolded him, I said, well, it's in the footnotes. It's like, when you have a contract to buy a car, and he said, well, it's in the footnotes, you have to buy your own steering wheel or something. So it's there, but people miss it. And I say this because I take the opportunity. People say, the Buddha never mentioned nimittas in the context of jhana. So what are you talking about? It's there. Sometimes I get it mixed up. It's either Majjhima 128, I think. 108 is a Gopaka Moggallana Sutta. Sometimes I get it the other way around. It's there. All the different defilements and how you actually work with these nimittas in order to calm them down, brighten them up, strengthen them, until they're strong enough to draw you in to these jhana states. So those nimittas are brilliant. And I tell this because many people have these experiences. They meditate, there's beautiful lights in the mind. Or sometimes they flow through the minds. They're like firework nimittas or ping pong nimittas. And just how you deal with these things and why they are like that. And also, sometimes it's not always seen as a light, totally agree with you. And sometimes for a couple of years, some of the meditators were saying that when they were meditating, that they could smell like almost like a jasmine smell or a rose smell, something very beautiful. And that wasn't in the hall. It wasn't in their nose. It was how their mind was perceiving this. And I thought this must be some heavenly beings visiting or something. And realized, no, it's not the heavenly beings or anything like that. It's an emitter of the nose, of smell. So sometimes, more rare sound emitters, they're not so common, in my anecdotal experience. But light emitters are usually the most powerful. And it's also, I'm going to take the opportunity here, is one disciple, meditator over in Kuala Lumpur, when he saw the light emitter, he told me it was really dirty, like a white cloth which had been like overused and had coffee stains on it. And I said, what have you been doing? Because when you see an emitter, it's like a reflection of your mind. And if you've been misbehaving, breaking precepts, lying, sort of, letting somebody down, you see that in your mind. There's a reflection, you're your emitter. And you can't deny this. This is where your precepts and your purity of mind, your giving, your generosity, your reliability, and of course, there's some people who are just naturally just such pure-hearted people. And this is one of the first payoffs you have for your precepts, not just precepts, your kindness, your giving, your generosity. The sort of person who, if you need a lift anywhere, forget what I'm doing, I'll give you that lift. Who's always serving. And those people, when the emitters come up, whoa, they're mind-blowing, they're beautiful. Because you're seeing a reflection of your mind. And you can't deny it. You get the insights into the importance of meditation, of your precepts, of your generosity, of your goodness, of your kindness. And that's direct, you can't miss it.
So we're almost out of time, or we are out of time, but and we're almost to the first jhana, so we're going to have to come back and do this again. And I'll invite Bhikkhu Bodhi for the next one. That'll be fun.
Yeah.
And
I know it's good.
and so I think that'll be a great discussion. But Shaila, did you want to finish with some words about encouragement for us all to go out and practice deep states of meditation?
Yes. Yes, good. That's exactly right. Go for it. I do think that sometimes meditators sell themselves short and think that they need decades or years or months in retreat in order to even approach these states. But if we have the right attitude and we recognize, as Ajahn is saying, that right concentration is based upon virtue, then as we're practicing our virtue, we are clearing the mind. We're clearing the space. As we work with the hindrances skillfully, then we'll be able to let them go. There are so many things that we can do in daily life to eliminate or work more skillfully with the things that kind of are corruptions to our mind or that perpetually distract us. And if we do a little bit here and there, we do create greater conditions, better conditions for concentration. And at some point, those conditions mature. So I guess I just want to say, don't sell yourself short. Give yourself the respect to cultivate this path. And this path includes samadhi. It's not just for somebody who's spent 20 years in a cave. It's for every meditator to cultivate samadhi. And it is available. It's not that every one of us is going to experience jhana in our next retreat. We can't
But
predict
everybody
that.
can.
It's possible. It's possible. It depends upon conditions, and we can cultivate those conditions. Sometimes I feel like a little bit of a cheerleader for it. But I do think one of the things that I've appreciated about this conversation is one of the things that sometimes the cheering for is, oh, what blissful states, oh, what happy states, oh, what joyous, rapturous states. They are. But the real essence of the cheering is the letting go. It's to know the mind of peace. It's to know the purity of the mind, the beauty of the mind that is not corrupted by the defilements. And that's what brings the great joy.
Excellent. So I know that the jhana practice was absent from Buddhism for many years. And I do remember that even when Ayakema came to visit Bodhinyana when I'd just taken over as the boss, the teacher, and I invited her to give the talk to all the monks. Sit on the high Dhamma seat and give a talk, which took her back a little bit. I've always wanted equity. And then she said afterwards, she gave a talk on jhanas. She said, that probably upset you, didn't it? I said, no, we talk about those all the time. And she was really quite stunned. And I remember going to another monastery, and I was talking about jhanas. And one of the monks, as soon as I came out of the reception area, he grabbed me by the shoulder and pulled me aside, and he looked around to make sure that no one was listening, and he whispered, thank you for teaching jhanas. It was like I was sharing pornography or something. Because it wasn't done. And all those years, that really encouraged me to teach more. Anything which is forbidden, which is not outside my precepts. And then just give it a try to teach lay people. And I don't know, maybe because I'm just maybe too much of a socialist brought up because I come from a poor family. But why should you stop certain people from enjoying the jhanas? So people told me, well, maybe teach your monks and maybe some nuns, but don't teach the lay people. And that really encouraged me. So let's give it a try. And what happened is many lay people have experienced those jhanas. Even if they haven't continued with them, but just having them once and having an idea of what these things are, that is really important. So that's why I thank you for allowing this conversation. You can. As Obama said, we can.
Thank you, Ajahn Brahm. Thank you, Shaila. And thank you all of you. Thank you so much.